Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Still with you on today's edition of Cairo Local Time. And of course, as promised earlier today, we discuss the recent forum that was held, the Beijing Summit of the Forum on the China-Africa Cooperation, of course, which was attended by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the importance of such a forum and the importance of investment opportunities from China as well as Asian countries to Africa and to Egypt. And I'm very delighted to be joined this afternoon in the studio by my guest, Engineer Osama Mowafak, the Deputy Head of the Energy Committee at the Egyptian Junior Businessmen Association, the EJBA. A very good afternoon to you, Engineer Osama, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Right, first and foremost, how important was Egypt's participation in the forum in your opinion?
Of course, such an event that is mainly connecting China with Africa and Egypt is, if not the most, it's one of the most important countries in due to its location, due to the history and so on. So Egypt is like a cornerstone in such an event, and a very, very strong representation of Egypt is a must. This is why it's on the level of presidents and a very strong delegation of Egypt. It is very, very, very important. And also Egypt has a lot of connections to all the other African countries. So Egypt there is not only promoting Egyptian benefits, it's also for the whole African territory, because it's like a historic responsibility we have towards Africa. And of course China is a lot interested in the African region. China have been doing business with Africa for so long, exporting for trillions of dollars. So it's time to coordinate on a different level, to enhance the relationships, to make some mixing in the culture. So Egypt is a cornerstone in such an event, and the success of this event is based on such countries, and mainly Egypt. So
you of course raised the very important issue of Egypt being a cornerstone for the success of such an event, not just for Egypt but for the whole African continent. And of course this follows with the presidency of the African Union, the AU, that Egypt will soon have in 2019. How important is this and Egypt's positioning for such a big post as the presidency of the AU?
Well, Egypt, the ties Egypt has important. Egypt is a developing country along with most of the African countries, right? And this is a very, very attractive field for investors and for capitals and so on, whether from the Chinese area or otherwise. And for Egypt to lead the African countries, it is going to be very, very, very successful. Why is that? Because Egypt is positioned in a way that it covers most of North African territory and the MENA region, and Egypt is connected also to the Middle East and has the ties with Africa. We have connections, we have deals like the COMESA agreements, we have agreements already that facilitates trades. So Egypt running this post in this period is very important, because Egypt in the last few years we have been doing a lot of projects, a lot of quick successes. So the leader of such an entity has to be quick, has to be doing rather than speaking about things. So we will be doers. We are setting an example here in attracting investments, in running huge projects in very short time. So being a leader and leading by example is what Egypt is going to do in Africa.
Indeed. Egypt is also to host the first ever intra-African trade fair, which is set to be held in Cairo in December of this year. And of course, this reflects Egypt's interest in boosting cooperation with Africa as well as in China and Asia. How important is such a fair, in your opinion, and on both political and economic strategic levels?
Egypt already hosts, like every 2 years, also another summit in Sharm el-Sheikh for Africa and cooperation. The level of the economy is becoming the same with politics. I mean, now we are seeing a very, very, very good practice of globalization.
Of course.
Now it's about that we are really practicing globalization through very, very mutual benefit agreements, very good economic and win-win situations. And this, alongside, creates better political environment, creates more peace and so on. So we just focus on economy, and then the politics takes a very good settlement, right? Because the win-win situation, and this is the actually title of this event we have in China, they are very focused on what they call pragmatic deeds, which is called win-win.
Is this to counter the whole Western or U.S. spin that this is a new form of colonialization for African countries by China? Is this why there's a focus on the issue of a win-win pragmatic relationship, in your opinion?
Yes, exactly. I wouldn't say that much, but it's like globalization has to do with a lot of countries coming together, exchanging culture. It doesn't have to be a single culture, especially for a country like Egypt. We have to be open to all other cultures. So here the government funds, like what was declared by the Chinese president of funds, has different types and different aspects, and for whole of Africa doesn't really mean that it will change the political map rather than it changes the economic map. Okay, China have been exporting to most of the countries in the world. It's time for China to invest back. It's normal. It's actually the normal progress of such an entity or such a country that is globally becoming one of the biggest economies in the world. So it's normal. It's a very normal gradient. I wouldn't think that it is that political. I don't see it from a political point of view rather than a lot of economic benefit. Consider with me that the capital in countries with a lot of capital and not much of development, what we offer in Africa is return on investment. We offer that the investment would return. It's actually, it's mutual benefit for real. It's not more of, it's not like donations and so on. No, it is real business.
You can put your money and get your money.
Exactly,
and
get profit on top of it. And this is where the exchange, this is what we promote in the investments. We don't promote help or need help, no, of course not. We promote opportunities for investors.
Right, now this forum was established 18 years ago, and it has received fruitful results, and it has become a significant mark when it comes to Chinese-African cooperation. Now, China-Africa trade volume has amounted to $170 billion in 2017, which is quite a substantial sum, up from just over 10 billion in 2000. In your opinion, what are the prospects for further boosting volume of trade?
Well, the volume of trade is a mark that is interesting, but the balance of the trade is more important to countries like us. Like, because if this volume is more of African countries importing, this is where there is a problem. So to balance the trade, this is important for China to facilitate, to import from Africa back of the balance. And the economic movement has to be more of building factories, making investments, making more merge on different aspects. It's not only about the trade capacity, the investment volume. Like the Chinese president spoke in the very beginning about the 8 major initiatives they are working on, and the amount of money that China would invest in 3 years, which is $60 billion US dollars, and with different aspects and so on. Those initiatives gives you a reflection of what should be there, which is not just a trade balance, because China is a very industrial country. It's very hard to reach balance with China for Africa, and Africa is more of a consumer platform. But while we consume, the return of that is the investment and more jobs and more training and so on. I want to highlight those 8 items, if you allow me.
Please do.
It is more of industrial promotion, with infrastructure connectivity, trade facilitation. This part, industrial promotion, has to do with trying to push the industry in Africa. Try to integrate, for example, have part of the industry happening in China and the rest happening in the receiving country, which is making on the receiving side more value added. Let's not say that every country can produce everything because of the resources and so on, but we can exchange the industrial stages and get it closer. Infrastructure connectivity is very important. We're creating more infrastructures, like also there is this Silk Road renovation. But creating infrastructure in the receiving countries and in countries like Egypt especially, that can create more connectivity to the Asian interface. And trade facilitation is the same. Facilitation in trade doesn't have to be a physical act. It can be regulations and laws that eases, that reduces the taxes, that allows better trading happening in both parties. And the guarantees for traders to make their own, like reduce the banking risk and the financial risk in the trading. Green development is also very important because industry creates carbon footprints and so on. Capacity building, which is very, very, very also important for countries like ours. We have the human capital, but we always speak in our EGB meetings a lot that we need a lot of training, we need a lot of capacity building in Egypt. This can be a good exchange. Of course, healthcare, I will just let that for more expertise, but it's important. People-to-people exchange is very, very politically important, which has to do with youth exchange in universities and so on. This opens the cultures together, creates a new generation later on, like in 10, 20, 30 years, you will have generations understanding the real culture, what's behind the lines, and they would understand, not just the language, the culture itself, both ways. And peace and security is part that is a result of all that. So I see a lot of those items are, Egypt is in need to coordination with China in that, and other African countries. And Egypt especially is already working in the same direction with a lot of other countries in Europe, but globalization is about that everyone can do the same if it's mutual benefit.
Of course.
It doesn't have to be in one direction.
Right. Engineer Osama, also this year marks the 5th anniversary of the China proposed Belt and Road Initiative, which also the Chinese president spoke about in his first speech that was delivered at the summit. Now, the importance of this initiative, the role that Egypt can play, especially considering its geographic location when it comes to the Road and Belt Initiative.
Yes, of course. The Egyptian location is something that we've been focusing on in many aspects. Egypt with a coast on the Mediterranean facing Europe and another coast facing Asia, and the connection to Africa is playing a very, very strong role. Egypt also internally, we have a lot of projects of internal infrastructure that would allow us, when we connect on international roads, we already have our built-in infrastructure. We're making logistics areas. We are making our own internal projects that would help make better use of such a project. Okay, because it's one thing that trade would pass through, and it's another thing to make value added. Like in Suez Canal, the same idea of making more value added, not just taking the fees on the crossing cargo. So Egypt already on the land making a lot of projects, and this would be enhanced with such a trade line.
Agreement, right. Of course, on the bilateral level, Egypt and China have witnessed a leap in boosting ties. We've also seen a few projects that have been signed during the presence of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi during the summit. Most importantly, standing out would be the electric train, another mega project to be implemented in Egypt. How important are these projects and the implementation of them, especially in the record time that has been proposed?
Yes, of course, Egypt have got the main attention of the investors, all right, and especially in China, because Egypt, with the strategic position and so on, the project of the train and the project of the other satellite also is planned, right, and the power plant, right? Those are the three main. The project of the electric train is very important for us to first test our capacity in building more railways, right? We want to do one project, even if it's funded or an investment, a foreign investment, for more railways, because actually Egypt would need to change the historic railways we have. So it's a start. I think it has a bigger role. It would be an initiative. If when it succeeds, it's going to create an effect and happen again and again. So it's a very, very important project for that. And of course, the use of the project, like the scale of using such a project, of course, is important. But here, I'm trying to focus on the impact of the projects rather than the usage of them.
Of course.
Of course, usage would be optimized. I'm sure that the study is covering the exact paths that would enhance, make the trains take cargo, take personnel. It would be very, very, very studied, this is sure. But what I'm wishing for is this to be an attraction for further similar projects alongside of Egypt. We need that very much. And also I see the satellite project and the technology and the communication. It is very, very important for Egypt to keep going again and again on such a project that is like last time we had a satellite initiative was very long ago. It's time to create more. It puts Egypt in its proper positioning, I think.
Indeed. Right. Of course, Egypt has, as you said, its own ongoing development and mega projects, including, of course, the Suez Canal economic zones, including the new administrative capital, etc. How important is the ongoing projects when it comes to bilateral agreements between two countries, whether it's for investment opportunities, the availability of location, etc. How important is it for them to be aware of our ongoing mega economic projects?
Of course, I think already the presence of China is there since long ago, like 2-3 years from now. They already invested in Egypt in mega projects, but not only China. So think about it with me, like we are opening, we said we are serious, we're available, we created a lot of economic advantages, and then investments started to come, okay? And think about it this way, it's more of a competition. If we promote well, it is actually a competition where capitals all over the world wants to invest to take advantages from the outcome of those projects, not only about the cash back or the return on investment. Okay, for example, on the Red Sea, you see China is investing in gas explorations, is investing in a lot of things because that would create easier exports to their side. And vice versa happens with on the north coast, where European countries are more investing. And all the countries are investing in the energy projects, if you notice that, the energy, because energy is basic for Egypt to grow. So I think what is happening here is very alluring to most of the investors, and China is taking a very strong step in it. Already in many projects that are not that much publicized. Those ones are having focus because of the event, but we had a lot of other projects that China is interested in, and they are willing to listen to more. And this is something that I want to ask businessmen, associations like ours and so on, to keep talking to embassies. We have delegations from all over the world in Egypt, very, very, very old-rooted embassies with very good trade people. We can speak to them about further projects because, of course, what is signed on the top level, 1, 2, 3 mega projects, but those funds can scatter into a lot of factories and make a lot of jobs and even universities. But this needs all the business community people, and with the help of the media, of course, to promote smaller and medium size, to take better geographical scattering of such a fund. Imagine this fund creating at least one factory in every city in Egypt. That would be a really interesting culture penetration for the Chinese, and better impact on us on the jobs, on the distribution. Beside, in parallel, like it would be even part of one of those huge projects, but it would create a very good impact. So
you spoke about other countries, not just China. You spoke about, for example, other Asian countries. Before we went on air, you said there was a business delegation also visiting Egypt, etc. Tell me a bit more in depth about the presence of not just China, but other, as you said, at the end of the day, we needed to be a competition between the countries.
Yes. Vietnam, of course, with the difference of the economies, sent an official delegation to the president, and the delegation created a round table in investment building in Gafi, and in this area where they had delegations of all the businesses, all the types, and Egyptian businessmen who was there, and the ministers, and they spoke about that they are open to invest and enhance the trade with Egypt in oil and gas, and in textiles, and in agriculture projects, and even in the fish farming, because they have very good technology there. So even countries with not a huge economy, they are a lot interested in exchanging knowledge, which is also something that we can benefit from.
Indeed.
We can have, it's a global time. We can have an investment coming from China and have the know-how coming from Vietnam, and we make a bigger fishing and fish farming, for example. We can combine those players on the table, and even from different regions. I don't like we have here American.
It doesn't necessarily have to be Asia only, or
we have a very famous American company in oil and gas that was partially sold to a Chinese company. This is happening.
It's all about the globalization.
Yes.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I'd like to thank you very much, Engineer Osama Mowafak.
Thank you so much.
The Deputy Head of the Energy Committee at the Egyptian Junior Businessmen Association. Thank you so much for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we've run out of time, and we wrap up today's edition of Cairo Local Time. We do hope you have enjoyed it. You're in the company of Angie Mehermani. Thanks for watching.